The Forgotten Tape. The night was cold, and the small town was quiet. Most shops were closed, and the streets were empty. Only one place still had light. An old TV repair shop at the corner of Main Street. Inside, Mr. Karim, the owner, sat at his workbench surrounded by broken radios, dusty televisions, and piles of wires. He was an old man with tired eyes, but his hands still worked carefully, fixing machines piece by piece. That night, he was repairing an old television that a customer had brought in. The TV was heavy, built in the 1980s, with wood on the sides and knobs instead of buttons. While checking its back panel, he found something unusual. Wedged deep inside, covered in dust and cobwebs, was a VHS tape. The tape had no proper label. Instead, it had strange red lines drawn across the plastic. They almost looked like scratches, as if someone had dragged a sharp knife across it. On the side, where people usually wrote the tape's title, there were only smudges of black ink. No name, no numbers, no sign of what was inside. Karim frowned. Strange, he whispered to himself. Why would someone hide a tape inside a television? Was it a prank, or something the customer forgot? Curiosity got the better of him. He dusted it off and carried it to the back room, where his old VHS player sat connected to a small screen. He hadn't used it in years. The player made a loud mechanical sound as he pushed the tape inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the TV flickered. Static filled the screen. White noise hissed from the speakers. Karim adjusted the knobs, trying to clear the picture. Suddenly, the static shifted, and an image appeared. It looked like a commercial. A family sat around a dinner table, smiling too widely, their faces frozen like mannequins. Their eyes didn't blink. The camera zoomed in on a plate of food, but the food looked strange. Gray and slimy, nothing like real meals. A cheerful voice spoke, but the words were distorted, broken, as if the tape itself was damaged. We are HFY family. Join us. Karim leaned closer. The sound made his stomach twist. The family kept smiling, but their mouths began to stretch unnaturally wide. Their teeth looked sharper with every second. The screen flickered again, and suddenly the family was gone. Now the TV showed only a dark hallway. A camera slowly moved forward, the sound of footsteps echoing in the background. At the end of the hallway was a door. Something scratched from the other side, nails dragging across wood. Then the screen cut to black. Karim quickly pressed stop. His hands were shaking. What in the world was that? He muttered. But the worst part wasn't the tape. The worst part was what happened next. Even though the TV was now off, he could still hear whispering. Very faint, like a voice coming from far away. He checked the VHS player. It was unplugged. The television was off, yet the whispers grew louder, as if circling the room. "Who's there?" Karim called out. His voice echoed in the empty shop. He turned on the lights, checked the corners, but no one was there. Only the broken television stared back at him with their blank, dead screens. Finally, the sound faded. Karim wiped the sweat from his forehead. He laughed nervously. "I'm too old for this nonsense." He convinced himself it was his imagination. Perhaps he was tired. Perhaps he had been working too long. But when he looked back at the TV, his blood ran cold. On the blank screen, his own reflection was staring back. But it wasn't right. His reflection was smiling, even though his own face was not. The mouth in the reflection slowly stretched wider and wider, showing rows of sharp white teeth. Karim stumbled backward, knocking tools off his workbench. He shut his eyes, and when he opened them again, the screen was normal. His reflection looked the same as before, old, tired, harmless. "Enough," he said, breathing hard. He pulled the tape out of the player and locked it inside a drawer. "Whatever this is, I don't want to see it again." But deep inside, he knew it wasn't over. That night, when he closed the shop and walked home, he kept hearing faint laughter behind him. Every time he turned around, the street was empty, When he reached his house, he sat on the couch, trying to calm down. The room was silent. He switched on his home television to distract himself. News, weather, random commercials played. Normal things. He almost felt safe again. Then, for a split second, the broadcast cut to static. His heart froze. And there it was again, the same family, smiling too wide, their mouths stretching across the screen. This time, they all spoke in unison. "We see you." The TV blinked back to the news. Nothing unusual. No one else seemed to notice. But Kareem sat frozen, his body trembling, sweat dripping from his face. He whispered to himself, "What have I found?" And somewhere, far away, in a place no human eye was meant to see, something had begun to stir. The next morning, Kareem could not shake off the nightmare of the tape. He had barely slept, his ears still echoing with the sound of the whisper. "We see you." His hands trembled as he unlocked his shop. The world outside seemed normal. Children walking to school, neighbors sweeping their porches, the sun shining gently. But inside his mind, the image of the smiling family burned like fire. He thought of destroying the tape, maybe burning it, but something held him back. Curiosity. A part of him needed answers. What was that tape? Who had made it? And how did it end up hidden inside an old television? Later that afternoon, he decided to visit an old friend, Rashid. Rashid worked at a small TV station in the city. He had been an editor and broadcaster for more than 20 years, and if anyone could explain the tape, it was him. Kareem carried the tape in a small box, tightly wrapped, as though covering it could protect him. When he reached the station, he found Rashid sitting in front of glowing monitors, editing a late-night program. "Kareem, my friend," Rashid greeted warmly. "You look pale. What's troubling you?" Kareem hesitated. He did not know how to explain it. "I found something. A tape. It's not normal. I need you to see it." Rashid raised an eyebrow, but curiosity sparked in his eyes. He guided Kareem to a back room with old equipment. They placed the tape in a player and pressed play. The screen came alive with static, then shifted to the same horrifying images. The smiling family, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide, the distorted voice whispering broken words. Rashid's face changed instantly. His smile disappeared. His skin turned pale, and his eyes widened as though he had seen a ghost. "Where did you get this?" Rashid whispered. "In an old television," Kareem said nervously. "Why? Do you know what this is?" Rashid leaned back, shaking his head. His voice trembled. "This commercial. I know it. I've heard about it. It was never supposed to exist anymore." Kareem's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" Rashid lowered his voice. "Back in the 1980s, the government tested a series of strange commercials. They were supposed to be experiments, subliminal messaging, psychological influence. The public never saw them. They were shown only to test audiences, but something went terribly wrong." He swallowed hard, as if afraid to say the words. People reported hallucinations. Some fainted. Some screamed and tore at their own skin. And some never recovered. They said the commercials carried something hidden, something not made by human hands. Kareem's skin crawled. But why make them at all? "No one knows the full story," Rashid said. "The project was shut down. Every tape was ordered to be destroyed. Broadcasters were threatened. Some who worked on it disappeared. It became a secret no one spoke of again. But somehow," he pointed at the box, "one of them survived." The room grew silent. Both men stared at the paused screen, the black-eyed family frozen mid-smile. Rashid rubbed his face, sweat shining on his forehead. "I shouldn't even be watching this. If anyone finds out we have it." He stopped suddenly. From the TV came a faint knock. Both men jumped. The screen was still frozen, yet a soft tapping echoed through the speakers. Like knuckles on wood. Knock, knock, knock. Kareem quickly hit stop, ejecting the tape. The knocking stopped instantly. The room fell silent, heavy with dread. Rashid whispered, "You should have burned this. You should never have shown me." "But what is it?" Kareem asked desperately. "What's inside the tape?" Rashid looked away, fear plain in his eyes. "I don't think it's just a recording. I think it's a door." The word struck Kareem like a blade. A door. To what? To where? Before Rashid could explain further, the lights in the editing room flickered. The monitors across the station suddenly glitched, filling with static. For a brief moment, every screen showed the same image. The smiling family, whispering words that none of them could understand. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. Shouts came from outside the room. Other employees rushed in, asking what happened. Rashid covered quickly, blaming it on a power surge. But both men knew the truth. That night, Kareem returned home shaken. His friend had refused to keep the tape, shoving it back into his hands as though it was poison. "Take it away. Don't bring it here again," Rashid had said. At home, Kareem locked the tape in a cupboard. He tried to sleep, but his dreams were haunted. He saw endless hallways. He heard knocking doors. He felt cold hands touching his skin. And always, always, that whisper, "Join us." At 3 a.m., Kareem woke to the sound of his own television turning on by itself. Static filled the room. His heart nearly stopped. Slowly, the static cleared, and there was the commercial again. The family around the dinner table. But this time, something was different. They weren't smiling at the camera anymore. They were staring directly at him. Their lips moved in perfect sync. "We remember you." The screen went black. Kareem sat frozen, drenched in sweat. He realized the horrifying truth. This was not a commercial at all. It was something alive, something reaching through the screen. And he had just opened the door wider. Kareem could not escape the tape. No matter how hard he tried, the images lived inside his head. The family's black eyes, the whispers, the knocks, they followed him into his dreams and into his waking hours. He barely ate. He barely slept. The world outside seemed normal, but his world had changed forever. One evening, as he sat in his shop staring at the cursed tape, he decided he needed to know the full story. He could not live in fear of shadows. If he understood where the tape came from, maybe, just maybe, he could end this nightmare. He called Rashid again. At first, Rashid refused to speak. "I told you to destroy it. Why are you still holding on to it?" "I need answers," Kareem said firmly. "Someone made this. Someone filmed it. Who?" Rashid hesitated, then lowered his voice. "I only know one thing. There was a cameraman. His name was Hamid Ansari. He worked on the production. He disappeared during filming. No body was ever found. Only a note." "A note?" Kareem asked. "Yes," Rashid said. "It was found in his apartment after he vanished." The words were strange, like he was losing his mind. The last line said, "They are inside the screen now. Don't let them out." Kareem felt his stomach twist. "Do you have a copy of that note?" Rashid sighed. "I don't, but I know someone who might. A journalist who investigated the case years ago. But listen to me, Kareem. Stop now. You don't want to go deeper into this." But Kareem had already made up his mind. The next morning, he traveled across the city to meet the journalist, a woman named Aisha. She was retired, living quietly in a small house filled with old newspapers and files. When Kareem introduced himself and explained, her eyes widened. "You found one of the tapes," she whispered. Kareem nodded. Aisha slowly pulled out a folder from her shelf. Inside were old photographs, copies of reports, and finally, a scanned copy of the cameraman's note. The handwriting was shaky. The words scattered. "The lights are wrong. The faces don't move like they should. They asked me to keep filming, but it wasn't them anymore. The actors weren't acting. Something was inside them. I could see it in their eyes." The final line made Kareem's blood run cold. "They are inside the screen now. Don't let them out." Kareem placed the paper down with trembling hands. So he saw something during the filming. Aisha nodded. Yes, and then he vanished. Some said he lost his mind and ran away. But others believed he was taken. The entire production crew quit after his disappearance. The commercials were locked away, never aired again. But how could the tapes survive? Kareem asked. If they were ordered to be destroyed. Some things don't want to die. Aisha interrupted, her voice heavy with fear. Maybe the tapes wanted to survive. The room grew quiet. Kareem could hear the ticking of the old clock on the wall. His hand shook as he asked the question that haunted him most. "Do you think it's alive?" Aisha looked at him with sad, tired eyes. "I think it's worse than that. I think it's a window. And sometimes, windows open both ways." That night, Kareem returned home with a copy of the note. He tried to convince himself that all of this was madness. Just old stories, old fears. But deep inside, he knew the cameraman had seen the truth. At midnight, the whispers returned. Kareem sat on his bed, clutching the note. The TV across the room flickered on by itself. The screen glowed with static. He wanted to run, but his body felt frozen. Slowly, the static cleared. A face appeared, blurred at first, then sharper. It wasn't the smiling family this time. It was a man's face. Gaunt, pale, with hollow eyes. His mouth opened slowly, and a whisper came through the speakers. "Don't let them out." Kareem's heart nearly stopped. It was the cameraman. For a moment, the man's face filled the screen, his eyes wide with terror. Then black hands, thin as shadows, reached up behind him and pulled him into the darkness. The screen went blank. Kareem fell to the floor, gasping for breath. His hands clutched the note. The words blurred in his vision. He realized the cameraman had not escaped. He was trapped in the tape, in the broadcast, in whatever place existed beyond the glass of the television. And now, Kareem feared, he himself was being pulled closer to that place. For the rest of the night, the screen glowed faintly even when unplugged. The reflection of the cameraman's wide, terrified eyes stared back at him from the darkness. Kareem was no longer the same man he had been a week ago. The old TV repairman who once spent his nights fixing radios and televisions now sat in fear of his own machines. The cursed tape was locked inside a drawer, but it did not matter. Even when it was hidden, the images still haunted him. He could feel the cameraman's desperate eyes staring at him whenever he closed his own. The warning would not leave his mind. "They are inside the screen now. Don't let them out." For days, Kareem tried to avoid turning on any television. He stopped watching news, avoided shows, even unplugged the set in his house. Yet the silence was no comfort. At night, he could hear faint static, like a signal trying to push through the walls. Sometimes it was only in his ears. Sometimes it was real, coming from the dead TV in the corner. By the fourth night, curiosity and dread fought inside him. A question burned in his mind. What would happen if he watched the tape again, this time at the darkest hour? What if midnight made the signal stronger? He told himself it was foolish. He told himself he would regret it. But still, as the clock struck 12, his hands moved to the drawer. The VHS tape felt heavier than before, as though it resisted being lifted. His breath came quick and shallow as he placed it into the player. The TV screen flickered alive. At first, only static. Then the smiling family returned. Their eyes were pitch black, their mouths stretched too wide. But this time, they did not simply stare at the camera. They turned their heads, slowly, unnaturally, as though they could see through the screen. And then they spoke. "We see you." The words rattled through the speakers like 100 voices speaking at once. Kareem's heart pounded. His hand shook, but he could not stop watching. He wanted to turn the TV off, but his body was frozen, as if invisible chains held him in place. The children at the table began whispering, Their voices layered over each other until they became a chant. The words were broken, but Kareem could still understand them. Open the door. The camera zoomed in on the hallway again, the same one from before. The door at the end stood waiting, scratched and trembling, as if something inside was trying to escape. This time, the camera moved closer. The scratching grew louder, turning into pounding. Kareem gasped as he realized something horrifying. The door was not just part of the recording. He could hear the pounding from inside his own house. Bang, bang, bang. It echoed through his walls, matching the images on the screen. No, no, this can't be real, he whispered, but the sound only grew louder. The TV screen shook. The family was gone. Only the door remained, filling the screen. The pounding was so loud now that the floor beneath Kareem seemed to tremble. His ears rang with the sound of wood breaking. Then, slowly, the doorknob on the screen began to turn. Kareem screamed and lunged for the power cord. He yanked it out of the wall. Sparks flew. The room went dark. The screen turned black. Silence. He stood in the dark, his chest rising and falling like a trapped animal. His heart thudded in his ears. For a moment, he believed it was over. He believed he had escaped. Then, the sound returned. A faint whisper, not from the TV, from behind him. "We see you." Kareem spun around. The screen, still unplugged, glowed faintly in the darkness. His reflection stared back, but it wasn't his. The reflection smiled. Its mouth stretched wide, filled with teeth that were too sharp, too many. Kareem stumbled backward, tripping over a chair. No, no. The reflection leaned closer to the glass, pressing its face against the screen. Its black eyes stared directly into his. Then, slowly, it raised a hand and tapped on the inside of the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Kareem ran to the drawer, yanked the cursed tape out of the player, and shoved it into a box. His hand shook so violently that he could barely close the lid. He wanted to throw it into the fire, but deep inside, something told him it would not burn. The whispers faded, but the fear remained. He knew the tape was more than cursed. It was alive. It was waiting. And midnight was when it reached out the strongest. That night, Kareem did not sleep. He sat in his chair with the lights on, staring at the box that held the tape. His eyes were red, his body weak, but his mind was racing. If the commercials were truly doors, then who was trying to come through? And worse, how many doors were still left unopened? 4 or 3 nights, Kareem avoided the tape. He kept it locked in a box, hidden under stacks of old radios in the darkest corner of his repair shop. But even when it was out of sight, he could feel it, like a weight pressing on his chest, like eyes watching him from the shadows. Every sound in the shop made him jump. The hum of a refrigerator, the click of a clock, the hiss of the wind, all of it felt alive. He told himself he would never play the tape again. He told himself he was done. But fate had other plans. One evening, just as he was closing his shop, a young man came in. He carried an old television, heavier than it looked, with cracked wood panels and a broken antenna. "Can you fix this?" the man asked. Kareem nodded slowly, his hands trembling as he took the set. When the man left, Kareem dragged it to his workbench. The moment he opened the back panel, his stomach turned cold. Inside the television, wedged tightly in the wires, was another VHS tape. This one was even older than the first. Its plastic case was yellowed with age, its edges cracked. Unlike the first tape, this one had no red lines, only a faint drawing of a toy bear scratched into the surface. Kareem's hands shook as he held it. "Another one," he whispered. He didn't want to see what was inside. He didn't want to hear the whispers again. But curiosity, dark and hungry, gnawed at him. Against his own will, he placed the tape into the player. The screen flickered. At first, cheerful music played, the kind heard in toy commercials from the 1970s. Children laughed and danced in a park, holding colorful toys. Their voices rang out in sing-song. Play with us, forever. The camera zoomed in on the toy, a small stuffed bear with button eyes. But the eyes weren't normal. They glowed red, faint at first, then brighter and brighter. The children's laughter grew louder, distorted, until it no longer sounded like laughter at all. It sounded like screaming. Kareem leaned forward, horrified. The children's faces twisted, mouths open in agony, but their voices kept repeating the same words. Play with us, forever. One child looked directly into the camera. Tears ran down his face, but his mouth still moved with the chant. His voice cracked, breaking through the others, almost like he was speaking to Kareem alone. Help me. The screen shook. The bear's red eyes filled the frame, glowing like burning coals. Then the words appeared in white letters across the black background. Once Isa'ian, never forgotten. The screen went dark. Kareem's heart pounded in his chest. He grabbed the remote, his finger hovering over the power button. But before he could press it, the screen lit up again. This time, it wasn't part of the commercial. It was his own shop. The television was showing a live view of the room, his workbench, his shelves, his tools. He could see himself sitting there, staring at the screen. Slowly, in the background of the image, shadows began to move. Figures appeared behind him, black and faceless, their outlines barely visible. Kareem spun around. The shop was empty. Nothing stood behind him. But when he looked back at the screen, the shadows were closer. 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 He screamed and yanked the tape from the player. The screen went black instantly. For several minutes, Kareem sat on the floor, shaking and gasping for air. He shoved the second tape into the same box as the first, locking it tightly. But deep inside, he knew something terrible. This was not just one cursed commercial. There were more. And each one carried a different kind of nightmare. That night, as he lay in bed, Kareem's phone buzzed. He picked it up with trembling hands. The screen was filled with static. No numbers, no words. Just static. Then, faintly, a child's voice whispered through the speaker. Play with us. Forever. Kareem dropped the phone. His whole body shook. He realized the curse was spreading. It was no longer trapped inside the tapes. It was reaching into his world, crawling through every screen, every signal, every wire. And worst of all, he felt that unseen door opening wider. Kareem could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glowing red eyes of the bear and the screaming children. He tried to tell himself it was only a tape, only an illusion, but deep inside, he knew the truth. Something had followed him. By morning, his phone was dead. No battery, no signal. Yet when he plugged it into the charger, the screen came alive on its own. Static filled the display, and through the crackling noise, a faint melody played. It was the same cheerful music from the commercial. Kareem threw the phone across the room. He ran to his shop to distract himself with work, but the shop no longer felt safe. The air inside was heavy, thick with something unseen. The box with the tapes sat under the shelves, locked tight, but he could feel their presence as if they were whispering his name. He decided to get rid of them. Kareem pulled the box out, wrapped it in layers of old cloth, and drove far out of the city. He found a deserted stretch of land where garbage was sometimes dumped. Without thinking, he hurled the box into the pile of broken machines and shattered furniture. "Stay there," he muttered. "Stay buried." For a moment, he felt relief. But when he returned to his shop later that evening, his stomach turned cold. The box was already there, waiting on his workbench. The lock was broken, and both tapes lay side by side. Kareem staggered back, clutching his chest. No, this can't be happening. The television across the room flickered on by itself. He hadn't touched it. He hadn't even plugged it in that day. Static filled the screen, then cleared. The first tape began to play. The family at the dinner table. The shadows crawling on the walls. the father's empty stare. But this time, there was something new. The father lifted his head, looked directly at the camera, and whispered, "You cannot throw it away." Kareem's knees weakened. He backed against the wall, breathing fast. Then, before his eyes, the picture changed. Now it showed the second commercial. The toy bear, the children chanting, their faces twisting in agony. Again, the words appeared. Once Ian, never forgotten. But instead of fading to black, the letters changed. Now, URPART of US. Kareem lunged forward and pulled the plug. Sparks shot out. The screen went dark. He stood there, sweating, shaking, trying to control his breath. He thought it was over. But then he heard it. The same cheerful music, echoing faintly from outside. Confused and terrified, he stepped into the street. His neighbors stood on their porches, televisions glowing behind them. Each screen played the cursed commercials over and over. The shadows danced on the walls of their homes, crawling closer to them. Children in the street laughed and sang, but their voices twisted into the same chant. "Play with us. Forever." Kareem covered his ears. No, no, no. The curse had spread. It wasn't trapped inside the tapes anymore. It was moving through signals, through wires, through every screen. Desperate, Kareem ran back inside. He smashed his television with a hammer. Glass shattered, sparks flew. For a second, he felt victory. Then his radio turned on. Then his old computer. Then the small portable TV he had repaired last week. Every screen showed the same thing, his own face, sitting terrified in his shop. And behind him, the shadows grew taller, reaching closer, their faceless heads bending down toward him. Kareem screamed and ran out of the shop, stumbling into the street. His neighbors turned to look at him. Their eyes were blank, their mouths twisted into smiles too wide, too sharp. One by one, they began to chant. Once seen, never forgotten. Once seen, never forgotten. Kareem fell to his knees, shaking, as the sound grew louder, echoing through the entire block. It felt like the whole city was joining in. For the first time, Kareem realized something horrifying. The tapes were not just cursed. They were a seed, a spreading infection. Whoever watched them became a part of it. And now the infection had begun to grow. That night, Kareem locked himself inside his shop, barricading the doors and windows. But even in the silence, the voices didn't leave. They whispered from the walls, from the cracks, from the static that crawled in his mind. He understood now. He could not fight the curse. He could only try to survive long enough to understand what it wanted. But deep in his bones, he already knew the truth. The curse didn't just want to haunt him. It wanted to spread through him. And soon, it would not stop with one city. It would not stop with one country. It would not stop until every screen in the world was playing its message. Once seen, never forgotten. For 3 days, Kareem barely slept. He stayed inside his shop, the doors barricaded, the windows covered. The outside world was no longer normal. Every time he peeked through the cracks, he saw neighbors staring at their glowing televisions. At first they laughed like children, their voices carrying that haunting sing-song melody. But now, their laughter had stopped. Now they were silent. They sat in front of their screens, motionless, eyes wide open, mouths hanging slightly. The glow of the cursed commercials washed over their pale faces. Kareem whispered to himself, "They're not alive anymore. They're just watching." The silence outside was worse than the chanting, worse than the screams. It was the silence of something unnatural, like the city itself had stopped breathing. On the 4th day, the silence broke. The shop's old radio, one he had smashed earlier, turned itself on. No music, no news, just a flat voice repeating, "Watch and remember. Watch and remember. Once seen, never forgotten." Kareem unplugged it, but the voice kept playing. He smashed it with a hammer. Still, The voice echoed faintly, as if inside his own skull. By evening, hunger forced him outside. He moved quietly, holding a wrench in his hand like a weapon. The streets were filled with people frozen in front of glowing screens. Old televisions sat in doorways, radios hummed on porches, even mobile phones lit up on the ground, all showing the same commercials. The first one, the family at the dinner table. The second one, the toy bear and the chanting children. But something had changed. Now the family turned their heads toward the camera, and their lips moved in perfect unison with the children. Play with us. Forever. Kareem's stomach twisted. He turned away, rushing down the street toward a small grocery shop. The door was wide open. Inside, food still lined the shelves, untouched. But the shopkeeper sat on a stool, his eyes blank, his face glowing in the blue light of a small television. Kareem stepped closer, trying not to make a sound. The man didn't move, didn't blink. The screen in front of him flickered, showing something new, a third commercial Kareem had never seen before. It was only a few seconds long. A single image of a door, standing alone in darkness. Words scrawled across the screen. The door is open. Kareem froze. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. Suddenly, the shopkeeper turned his head sharply, like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. His eyes locked on Kareem. His lips moved slowly. "You should not have watched." Kareem stumbled back, nearly dropping the food in his hands. The man stood up, his movements stiff and broken, like a doll pulled into life. He began to walk toward Kareem, whispering over and over. "Once seen, never forgotten. Once seen, never forgotten." More voices joined in. From the street outside, people began to rise from their chairs, turning their blank eyes toward him. The silence had ended. The city had awakened. Kareem dropped the food and ran. His footsteps echoed through the empty streets as dozens of voices followed, chanting in perfect unison. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the sound. He ducked into an alley, panting, pressing himself against the wall. The crowd passed by slowly, moving as one, their eyes glowing faintly like the red bear's eyes. Kareem waited until the sound faded, then stumbled back toward his shop. His hands shook as he bolted the door behind him. He sank to the floor, whispering, "I can't escape this. It's everywhere. The whole city is theirs now." That night, sleep finally took him, but his dreams were worse than waking life. He dreamed of the commercials playing endlessly, of the bear's glowing eyes, of the family staring at him from their dinner table, and in the middle of the darkness, the door appeared again. The same door from the third commercial. It opened. From inside came a black wind filled with voices, crying, chanting, laughing, screaming all at once. And from that wind, shadowy figures stepped out, tall, faceless, endless. When Kareem woke, his shop was no longer silent. Static hissed from every corner. The shadows from his dream crawled across the walls, bending and twisting, their shapes impossible to describe. On his broken television, words appeared again, written in white across the static. "The door is open." Kareem's body went cold. His city had fallen silent. His neighbors were no longer themselves. The curse had spread to every home, every street, every screen. And now something worse had come through the door. Something that would not stop until the silence covered the whole world. Kareem sat in his shop, frozen, staring at the glowing screen. The words burned into his mind. "The door is open." He whispered to himself, "No, no, it can't be real. It's just a tape, just a tape." But deep down, he knew the commercials were no longer just recordings. They were gateways. The shadows on his walls shifted, twisting like smoke, but too solid to be smoke. They had no faces, no eyes, yet he felt their gaze pressing into him. Every second, they grew taller, stretching toward the ceiling. The floor creaked. Kareem grabbed his wrench and swung at the nearest shadow. The metal passed through empty air, but the thing still moved back, as if mocking him. Then it leaned forward, and a sound like laughter rattled inside his skull. His breath came quick and shallow. He stumbled toward the back door of the shop, but before he could open it, his radio came alive again. A child's voice sang through the static. "Play with us. Forever. The door is open. Come inside." Kareem covered his ears, but the voice grew louder inside his head. Echoing through his thoughts, he dropped to his knees, screaming. When he opened his eyes, the shadows were gone. The shop was silent again. But the television was not. It flickered with a new commercial, one he had never seen before. At first, it looked like an ordinary ad for a neighborhood store. Bright colors, smiling people. A voice cheerfully said, "Your family deserves the best." Then the picture blurred. The people stopped smiling. Their faces melted into blank skin. No eyes, no mouths. Behind them, the door appeared again, standing in a black void. Slowly, it creaked open wider. A long, pale hand reached through. Its fingers were too many, bending the wrong way, clawing at the edges. Kareem shouted and pulled the plug. Sparks flew, but the screen didn't die. The hand kept reaching, growing larger, pushing through the frame as if the television was only a window. Kareem ran to the shelves, grabbed a heavy hammer, and smashed the screen. Glass shattered. Sparks exploded. For a second, everything went dark. Then, in the cracked glass of the broken television, the door still glowed faintly, and the hand was still pushing through. Kareem's stomach twisted. He grabbed the box of tapes and ran outside. The street was empty now. Not even the silent neighbors remained. Televisions glowed in every window, all showing the door. The whole city was opening to it. He ran to the edge of the river. His lungs burned, his legs shook, but he didn't stop. When he reached the water, he lifted the box high and threw it in. The tapes sank beneath the surface, swallowed by the dark. For a moment, relief washed over him. But then the river began to ripple. The water turned black, bubbling as if something underneath was waking. Kareem stumbled back, horrified, as the reflection of the door appeared across the surface. It stretched wide, wider, wider, until the whole river looked like an endless black hallway. Voices rose from the depths. Once seen, never forgotten. The door is open. A pale shape began to rise from the water. Tall, faceless, dripping with shadows. It stepped out slowly, each movement jerking like broken film. Kareem turned and ran, his legs nearly giving out, his heart hammering. He reached the edge of the city by dawn. The streets were empty, silent, abandoned. Every screen he passed showed the same door, glowing brighter with every second. By the time the sun rose, the city looked dead. No cars, no voices, no birds in the sky. Just silence. Kareem collapsed against a wall, shaking. He whispered to himself, "I'm the only one left. The only one." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Because when he looked up, he saw them. Dozens of figures standing at the far end of the street. Their bodies were human, but their faces were smooth and pale, like the melted people in the commercial. They stood in silence, all facing him. And behind them, in the sky above the city, the door had appeared again, larger than ever, glowing like a wound in the world. The edges of reality itself seemed to tear open as the door swung wider, the pale hand now fully visible, followed by something larger, something still hidden in the dark beyond. Kareem's breath caught in his throat. His whole body trembled. The door wasn't just open. It was opening wider. And whatever was behind it was almost here. Kareem's body shook as he stared at the sky. The door hung there, massive and glowing, like a hole ripped into reality itself. It pulsed with a dull red light, spreading shadows across the silent city. The faceless figures in the street didn't move. They only watched him, their smooth heads tilted, their bodies stiff. It was as if they were waiting for something. Then the door creaked. The sound was deep, heavy, and endless, like the groan of the earth itself. Slowly, it swung wider. A long, pale arm reached through, its fingers stretching unnaturally, bending backward as if made of broken bones. The air grew cold. Kareem pressed himself against the wall, whispering, "No, no, it can't come through. It can't." But the thing was already stepping forward. First came its head, or what should have been a head. It was featureless, smooth like wet clay, but shapes shifted beneath its surface, almost like faces pressing against skin from the inside. Some wept, some screamed, some laughed. Their muffled voices echoed faintly, overlapping in a nightmare chorus. Behind it, more arms reached through the door. Thin, white, endless. Each hand clawed at the edges, widening the tear. The glowing door stretched larger, spilling its black wind into the city. The faceless figures on the ground suddenly dropped to their knees. In perfect unison, they lifted their heads and began to chant. Once seen, never forgotten. Once seen, never forgotten. The sound rattled inside Kareem's skull. He clutched his ears, but the chant only grew louder, vibrating through his bones. He stumbled backward, his legs weak. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why did I see it first? Why did I?" Then he froze, because one of the faces pressing inside the creature's shifting skin was his own. His own mouth, twisted in agony. His own eyes, wide with terror. The sight nearly drove him mad. He screamed, falling to his knees, clawing at his own face as if he could tear the image away. The thing pulled itself further through the door, its massive body bent and twisted, too large for the human eye to understand. It had no clear shape. Sometimes it looked like a giant, sometimes like a mass of limbs and faces, sometimes like smoke made solid. The city groaned around it. Windows shattered, buildings shook. Lights flickered on and off. The faceless people rose to their feet again, their heads all turned toward Kareem. And then, in one voice, they spoke. "You are the first. You are the seed." Kareem stumbled back, his heart pounding. "No, no, I don't belong to you." But deep inside, he remembered the second commercial, the words written on the screen. "Now you are part of us." The realization made his blood run cold. From the moment he watched that tape, it had marked him. He wasn't just a victim. He was a piece of the door itself. The pale creature in the sky bent low, its faceless head tilting toward him. 100 muffled voices whispered through its skin. "Come to us. Come through." Kareem's vision blurred. His body grew heavy, his thoughts twisted. He felt something pulling at him, tugging him toward the sky. His feet lifted slightly off the ground. "No," he screamed. He grabbed a sharp piece of glass from the broken streetlight beside him and dug it into his arm, the pain shocking him back. Blood spilled, but the pull loosened. For now. He staggered away, running blindly through the empty streets. Behind him, the chanting grew louder, echoing through every building, every broken screen, every shadow. Once seen, never forgotten. Once seen, never forgotten. The sky darkened, the door glowing brighter, wider. The pale creature's body unfolded further into the world. Every step it took shook the ground. Kareem ran until his legs nearly gave out, until he collapsed inside the ruins of a small mosque at the edge of the city. He pressed his back against the cold wall, gasping, shaking, bleeding. The silence returned, heavy and unnatural. Then the mosque's old television flickered to life. The first commercial began again, the family at the dinner table. Their empty eyes, their shadows. But this time, they didn't stay in their seats. The mother turned, pointing at the screen, directly at Kareem. Her voice, clear and sharp, cut through the silence. "You cannot escape. The door is already inside you." The picture flickered. The father's face shifted, twisting into Kareem's own face. His own voice echoed back at him. Once seen, never forgotten. Kareem dropped to the floor, shaking violently, covering his eyes. He realized the truth he had feared all along. The commercials weren't only about haunting the world. They were instructions, rituals, a way to open the door wider. And Kareem himself was the final step. Because the curse wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside him. And soon, through him, the door would open completely. Kareem lay on the cold floor of the ruined mosque, his body trembling, his mind breaking. The voices echoed inside him now. They no longer came from the televisions, the radios, or the faceless people in the streets. They came from his own thoughts. Once seen, never forgotten. He pressed his hands against his ears, but it didn't matter. The chant was inside him, like blood in his veins. Every time he tried to think his own thoughts, the curse swallowed them. The television in the corner of the mosque flickered again. The screen showed the door in the sky, glowing brighter than the sun. Shadows poured out of it, spreading like smoke across the city. Then, suddenly, the screen changed. It was Kareem. Not his reflection. Not a recording. A live broadcast. He could see himself sitting on the mosque floor, pale and broken. He could even see the television behind him, glowing with the same image. A broadcast inside a broadcast, endless, repeating forever. Kareem's stomach twisted. He stumbled forward and smashed the screen with a stone. But even in the shards of glass, the broadcast continued. His face, his body, his terror. The voices inside him grew louder. You are the broadcast. You are the door. Through you, the world will see. Kareem screamed, clutching his head. His skin burned, his vision blurred. He fell to his knees, and for a moment, he felt something tear open inside him. When he lifted his head, the mosque was gone. He stood in an endless black void. The door towered in front of him, massive and glowing, its edges stretching into infinity. The pale creature crouched on the other side, its faceless head pressed close, its many voices whispering together. Step through. Kareem shook his head violently. No, I won't. I won't be part of you. The voices laughed, a low and endless sound. You already are. The door opened wider. The black wind pulled at his body, dragging him forward. Faces pressed against his skin from the inside, twisting beneath his flesh. His arms bent unnaturally. His mouth opened wider than it should. His scream wasn't his own anymore. It was theirs. Back in the real world, across the silent city, every screen lit up at once. Televisions in living rooms, radios on shelves, phones in pockets, billboards in the streets, all of them flickered with Kareem's face. His wide eyes, his broken mouth, his scream. And then the final words, spoken in his own voice. Once seen, never forgotten. The door is open. The broadcast spread like fire. First across the city, then across the country, then across the world. Satellites carried it into every home, every device, every screen. Millions watched, and millions became still. Families froze in their chairs, faces blank, eyes wide. Children dropped their toys, staring into glowing phones. Drivers stopped their cars in the middle of roads, hands locked on the wheel, eyes fixed on the dashboard screens. Everywhere, silence. Then chanting. Once seen, never forgotten. Once seen, never forgotten. In the sky above every city, the door appeared. Pale hands reached through, pulling, clawing, opening reality wider. The faceless creature stepped forward, followed by others. Endless others. Earth itself became the screen. And Kareem, what was left of him, was the broadcast. His face flickered across the surface of the world, screaming, laughing, crying all at once. There was no escape, no hiding, no forgetting. Because once seen, it was forever.